Welcome back to the channel, where we explore the hidden secrets from the lives of your loved reality TV couples. And, boy, is this episode going to surprise and shock you, as we have the most dramatic story from 90 Day Fiancé's courtroom and a story about how love, loyalty, and a huge family fight came together to shock us all. How would you feel if you were torn between the person you loved and your own family? Well, just to make it a bit worse, would it not have been hard to take a stand and face everybody around you? That is exactly how Singh felt, and guess where it got him? Well, let us see. For months, their journey has been one that has captured not only Jenny and Sumit's cute, quirky, funny, and frustrating moments, but also their struggle to build a life across different parts of the world, holding hands on one continent and apart on another. But behind all that, it seems, was a storm nobody expected, one that brewed quietly in the most unseen way. A feeling so thick it can only be chopped with a knife, with Jenny and Sumit's relationship in shambles, and it all boiled down to one person, Sumit's mom. The unhidden displeasure, unfair treatment to Jenny, were all going on behind closed doors, but one scene changed everything, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happened next. The woman who was Jenny, the wife from America thousands of miles away, seeking to carve a new life as a wife to Sumit, had already navigated a multitude of obstacles as she tried to secure herself a place and respect within his ancestral family circle. However, this was no longer a matter of mere misunderstanding, it was a rising tide of unfair accusations and interference on every front she turned to. She was made to feel as if she were living on eggshells within her own house, never knowing from which quarter the attack would come next. And where was Sumit? Like a man torn asunder on a political bar's rack, he was torn between the strong protective feelings he harbored towards Jenny and the burden and expectations from a mother he was taught to revere since his youth. The situation was close to boiling over, and what was expected to be a safe sanctuary was fast turning into an arena. One could sense all that was happening, even from behind that screen. There was whispering among neighbors, glancing among members of her own, and poor Jenny's endurance was being pushed to an extreme. She loved her man from all her heart, but every single day was bringing up challenges that weren't on any invitation list, challenges that would upset everything that marriage was all about. And then, of course, was building up to that catalyst for conflict that's being spoken about. Sumit had to make a choice. And when he did, it wasn't quiet, it wasn't subtle, it was loud, it was firm, and it left a mark that no one could ignore. But, as always, let's go back a little, so we can know how it all began, because every word, every glance, every argument had been moving towards this. Stay tuned, folks, because by the time we reach the end of this video, it becomes clear that it wasn't just about defending Jenny, but about standing up for the basics of love, compassion, and finally, about standing up for oneself for once in one's life. And trust me, folks, some of the things out of the mother's mouth are totally beyond belief. Okay, then. Now that you are ready, let us start and go into the story, starting with the initial days when the first manifestations of unfair treatment were noticed. The tension didn't happen overnight. It started small, tiny comments, little gestures, things that many viewers might have missed. But to Jenny, each remark cut deeper than the last. It began with the way Sumit's mother questioned her every decision, what she cooked, how she dressed, even the way she interacted with family members. First, Jenny tried to laugh it off. She reminded herself that cultural differences can be tricky, that maybe it wasn't personal. Still, in truth, it was. Every snide remark, every subtle criticism, felt like a brick thrown at her confidence. Jenny had given so much of herself, by giving up everything she knew in America and venturing into a world completely different, completely unfamiliar. Yet, there was this constant balance of trying to find herself in a world of customs, traditions, and trying to become a part of this family, which, in turn, became a constant struggle of walking a tightrope of whether Jenny managed to balance her affection and respect for Sumit with the constant scrutiny by his mother. And it wasn't just the words. The tension in the home was palpable. Jenny began to notice the glances exchanged among other family members, glances that could communicate an awful lot without anyone ever opening their mouths. It was the kind of environment in which it was best not even to breathe wrong, lest you pucker everyone around you into a scowl. Suffice it to say, fans at home could pick up on the silent tension, even if they never knew just how much Jenny herself struggled with her own state of mind. As opposed to this, there was a tug of war within the mind of Sumit. He was completely in love with Jenny, but he was also answerable to familial responsibilities. Caring for one's parents, especially the mother, is an important aspect in Indian society. In fact, it is a virtue, a duty, and a feeling of respect, devotion, and worship. However, witnessing Jenny face criticism at every step, seeing her morale shatter into 1,000 pieces, was something completely different. What was he to do? As the days went by, minor fights built up to bigger fights over minor reasons and accusations. Jenny would patiently try to explain herself, but she would still end up being interrupted or not taken seriously about it. The worst part was to come, as rumors began circulating among the family and its members, rumors about Jenny, rumors about how she was doing certain things, and accusations meant to portray her in a bad light. It is a typical move used by manipulators to try and portray the outsider as bad and thereby regain family loyalty on their side. It almost worked, or almost worked temporarily. Sumit's mother was a force to reckon with, and Jenny was being tested as never before. A person as tough as Jenny would certainly not let this slide. Underneath this calm and cool facade was a fire raging to ensure she didn't allow any individual to take a dig at her self-respect and a love she shared with none other than Sumit. All this injustice and accusations only kindled this fire, and it wasn't long before this fire engulfed itself to a point where words were not enough to settle scores. It was then that things began to move from tension into open conflict. These minor cracks within the household had developed into chasms, and everyone was able to realize that things would eventually come to an open confrontation. And then, when Sumit finally did decide to step up, he did so, not quietly, not tentatively, but with a resolve that would astound everyone, including his own mother. Stay on this topic a bit longer, as in the next part, we dive into the first explosive moment where Jenny stood up, Sumit stood up, and this house was never the same again after this. Trust me, it's a moment where you want to see the tension and drama and everything play out itself. Finally, the moment of truth arrived, but in such an unexpected fashion that it was like a storm nobody could have avoided or wished away. Yet again, it was an ordinary afternoon at the Singh household, with Sumit in the kitchen, Jenny trying to organize things in order, while his mom lurked around somewhere in between. But another outbreak of tensions that had been brewing in the air for weeks resulted in yet another chain of incidents, or should it have remained just that, after an innocuous comment made by Sumit's mom aimed at humiliating Jenny in front of everybody around her. Jenny's patience, which was already sorely tested, finally gave way under the pressure. She stood up to Sumit's mother and looked squarely at her, and then, as she began to explain to her how unfair she was to accuse and criticize her and how she had always treated her with respect and love, the entire room fell silent. The relatives present stopped whatever they were doing. Neighbors and friends who were over to drop in on a visit sensed the sudden current of tension and unease in the air and knew they were witnessing a serious moment, and Jenny, although under control and as calm as ever, was finally not quietly and passively enduring anything but was speaking up and defending herself. Sumit observed all this with heightened emotions coursing through his veins, mindful that things could turn out one of two ways when they faced off against one another, one where they could possibly have a big fight on their hands that left everybody having a bad day for themselves, or finally and possibly for him to stand up for Jenny as no one really had before. So for a long moment, things did hang suspended. The cultural press was extremely strong for him to openly fight with his mother, but to do nothing for Jenny was no longer an issue. Lastly, Sumit spoke. And when he did, it was firm, unwavering, and surprising to all in the room. He told his mom that Jenny did not do anything wrong. Furthermore, he told her that the rumors were unfair, untrue, and hurtful. Lastly, he told her that Jenny left her life behind and was dedicating her whole life to build the kind of future they would have together. It is essential to understand that all of the words spoken were powerful and filled with authority as they resonated within the house. Everyone was stunned for an instant. Was all her mother seemed able to say, almost as though she couldn't believe that her own child was standing up to her. The others also looked at one another, not knowing whether to speak up or remain loyal. But for Jenny, relief, gratitude, and disbelief all blended together. Finally, after weeks of being judged, she had found an ally, a partner who would stick up for her, no matter whom he had to go up against. Yet the conflict did not end here. Jenny's mom, who had till then not been accustomed to facing opposition, lashed out in anger, frustration, and words dripping with bitterness. Jenny, she said, lacked respect, attempted to influence and manipulate Sumit, and even disrupted the household. Tension filled the air, every remark, every move, a battle between the traditional institution of marriage and the modern practice of partnership, parental respect, and individual love. Still, however, Sumit did not give in. Calmly but convincingly, Sumit repeated his commitment to Jenny to assure her that no one else was more important to him than Jenny's well-being. In fact, no marriage can survive on anything less than complete trust, love, and esteem for one another. If those values were not upheld but rather betrayed through unfair treatment, then something was bound to change. And from this moment on, the first lines were formed. The family was aware that nothing was going to remain the same. Tune in next time because, boy, is it going to get even more intense. You want to see how it all affects emotionally, how rumors are spreading through relatives, and how Sumit's bold step takes off a whole chain of events that nobody knew would happen. You won't want to miss that. I assure you. It's going to be more intense. After Sumit's bold confrontation, the household was shaken. The air felt heavier, charged with unsaid words and simmering resentment. No one could ignore what had just happened. Jenny felt a mix of relief and anxiety, relief that Sumit had finally defended her, anxiety because she knew this wasn't the end. In traditional households like Sumit's, challenging parental authority was more than shocking, it was almost unheard of. And now, the ripple effects of his stand were beginning to spread. Relatives whispered in corners, some openly criticizing Sumit for his audacity, while others quietly admired his courage. Friends and neighbors who had gathered for casual visits suddenly found themselves witnessing the tension firsthand. Rumors began to circulate almost instantly. Did you hear what Sumit said to his mother? Do you think he'll really stand by Jenny? How long can this household survive with such conflict? Jenny, though grateful for Sumit's support, felt the weight of every gaze in the room. Every side-eye, every whispered comment was a reminder that her struggle was far from over. Sumit, meanwhile, could feel the strain taking its toll. He loved Jenny deeply, but the cultural and familial pressure was immense. In his mind, he replayed every moment leading up to the confrontation, the subtle digs, the unfair comments, the constant tension. He realized that his mother wasn't just expressing disapproval, she was testing boundaries, asserting control, and expecting him to bend to her will. But Sumit had reached a breaking point. He could no longer stand by and watch the woman he loved suffer in silence. Jenny noticed the change in him immediately. Before, Sumit often hesitated, afraid of rocking the boat or causing a family rift. Now, there was determination in his eyes, a clarity that told her he was ready to fight for their marriage, no matter the cost. And that knowledge gave her strength. For the first time in weeks, she felt seen, heard, and supported. The tension between Jenny and Sumit's mother, however, was far from resolved. Every conversation, every shared meal, carried an undercurrent of resentment. Jenny had to navigate not only her relationship with Sumit but also the fragile dynamics of the family, each interaction a potential spark for further conflict. The days following the confrontation were some of the most emotionally draining Jenny had ever experienced. She noticed subtle changes in the household, the cold stares from certain relatives, the quiet murmurs as she walked by, the unspoken judgment hanging in the air. And yet, she refused to retreat. She continued to show kindness, patience, and respect, all while protecting her own dignity. Every step she took was measured, every word carefully chosen, because she knew that one wrong move could escalate the conflict again. Sumit, standing by her side, became both a shield and a guide. Together, they navigated the delicate balance of asserting their rights while maintaining family ties. But it was clear that some battles were unavoidable. The question hanging over everyone's heads was simple: would Jenny finally be accepted, or would the household tension escalate to a point of no return? Stay tuned, because in the next part, we'll dive into the moment when the feud explodes completely, as hidden frustrations come to the surface and the household braces for the confrontation that changes everything. You won't want to miss the drama, the emotion, and the shocking twists that follow. Weeks of simmering tension finally erupted into full-blown confrontation. The subtle digs, whispered accusations, and silent resentment that had defined the household gave way to a storm that could no longer be ignored. It started during a family meal, a moment that should have been ordinary, peaceful even. But the air was thick with unspoken frustration. A careless comment from Sumit's mother, meant to criticize Jenny, ignited the fire. Jenny, who had endured countless unfair remarks, finally spoke up, not with hesitation, not with fear, but with conviction. She explained, calmly yet firmly, how the constant criticism, the false rumors, and the subtle manipulations had affected her. She reminded the family that she had left her entire life behind to be with Sumit, that her love and loyalty had never wavered. For the first time, Jenny's words cut through the tension like a knife, echoing in the room and leaving no one untouched. Sumit could feel the eyes of every relative on him, some judging, some silently cheering. In that moment, he knew he could no longer remain neutral. The cultural and familial pressure was immense, but so was his love for Jenny. Taking a deep breath, he finally addressed his mother directly. His voice was calm but unwavering, his words deliberate and powerful. He told her that Jenny was his wife, that she deserved respect, and that he would not allow her to be treated unfairly under his roof. The room went silent. His mother's face reflected a mix of shock, disbelief, and anger. It was not common, almost unheard of, for a son to confront his mother in such a way. Yet Sumit stood his ground, repeating that his loyalty was not a matter of choice anymore, it was a matter of love, justice, and respect. Every relative in the room could feel the gravity of the moment. This was more than a disagreement, it was a declaration. Sumit was drawing a line, making it clear that certain boundaries could not be crossed. But as powerful as Sumit's words were, the confrontation was far from over. His mother, deeply rooted in tradition and authority, pushed back. She accused Jenny of disrespect, of manipulating Sumit, of destabilizing the family. The room became a battlefield of words, emotions running high, voices rising, and the weight of cultural expectations pressing down on everyone. Jenny felt her heart race, but instead of retreating, she held her ground, supporting Sumit, reinforcing the truth of her actions, and refusing to be cast as the villain. At this moment, fans watching at home would have understood just how difficult the situation had become. Sumit's loyalty, Jenny's courage, and the clash of cultural expectations all collided in a way that no one could have predicted. Every word spoken, every glance exchanged, heightened the tension. It was clear to everyone that this was a turning point. Nothing would ever be the same in the Singh household. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll see the emotional aftermath of this explosive confrontation, how the family reacts, and the difficult choices Sumit and Jenny face as they navigate this high-stakes situation. Trust me, the drama only intensifies from here. The storm that erupted during the confrontation left the Singh household shaken. Silence filled the rooms, punctuated only by muffled whispers and uneasy footsteps. Jenny, though relieved that Sumit had stood up for her, felt an overwhelming mix of exhaustion, anxiety, and lingering tension. For weeks, she had tried to navigate the delicate balance of respecting Sumit's family while asserting her own dignity. Now, the weight of cultural expectations and family pressure pressed down harder than ever. Every interaction carried new tension. Relatives who had quietly supported Sumit's stand now tiptoed around the unspoken question, what happens next? Friends and neighbors, once casual onlookers, sensed the household was on edge. Gossip spread quickly, fueling speculation about whether this confrontation would heal old wounds or widen the divide permanently. Jenny felt the scrutiny everywhere, in every glance and every whispered conversation. Even small gestures, a lingering stare or a subtle sigh, felt like judgment. Sumit, fully aware of the emotional toll on Jenny, became her anchor. He could see the strain etched on her face, and hear the exhaustion in her voice. And yet, he also recognized her incredible resilience. She had left everything behind, her home, her comfort, her familiarity, to build a life with him. She had endured criticism, skepticism, and outright hostility, and she had never wavered. Now, in this moment of crisis, he felt a profound mix of admiration and responsibility. The emotional fallout extended beyond Jenny's struggle. Sumit himself felt torn between love and cultural duty. His mother's anger, though understandable within her worldview, conflicted with his desire to protect his marriage. In private moments, he wrestled with guilt and fear, the fear of disowning a parent, the guilt of defying tradition, the anxiety of standing firm while watching the woman he loved suffer. Every decision felt monumental, every word carefully measured, because the wrong move could have lasting consequences for their relationship and the entire household. Jenny, meanwhile, refused to be passive. She knew that gaining acceptance would require patience, empathy, and resilience, but also clear boundaries. Every interaction with Sumit's family became a careful negotiation of respect and self-preservation. She continued to demonstrate love and commitment while refusing to accept behavior that belittled or disrespected her. In this delicate dance, she gradually began to carve out a space for herself, a small pocket of dignity in a household fraught with tension. But the emotional stakes remained high. Sumit's mother, still resistant, tested the limits of their patience. Every casual remark, every passive-aggressive comment, became a challenge Jenny had to navigate. Fans watching this unfold would recognize the bravery it took to face such relentless scrutiny, the courage it required to defend oneself while remaining committed to love. Jenny and Sumit were no longer just a couple, they were a team, standing together against overwhelming odds. The tension in the Singh household had reached a breaking point. What had started as simmering resentment had now escalated into a full-blown standoff. Every glance, every word, every subtle gesture seemed magnified, loaded with emotion. Jenny and Sumit could feel the invisible pressure of cultural expectations, tradition, and family honor pressing down like a heavy weight. And then it happened, the moment that would change everything. Sumit's mother delivered an ultimatum. Her voice was firm, unyielding, carrying the authority of generations behind it. If you do not distance yourself from Jenny, you are no longer my son. The words landed like a thunderclap, shattering the fragile calm of the household. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. Relatives froze, unsure whether to intervene, unsure whether to speak or flee the tension that now consumed every corner of the home. Jenny felt her heart skip a beat, a mixture of fear, empathy, and defiance coursing through her. Sumit's face reflected the storm of emotions inside him, shock, grief, anger, and love, all intertwined. He loved his mother deeply, yet he also loved Jenny with an intensity that could not be denied. In that split second, the reality of the choice before him became painfully clear. One path meant adhering to tradition, obeying his mother, and sacrificing the woman who had left everything behind for him. The other path meant standing by Jenny, defending her against injustice, and risking the rejection of the family that had raised him. Jenny, standing silently beside him, felt the weight of the ultimatum as sharply as Sumit did. Yet she also recognized the courage it had taken for him to confront his mother earlier, and she knew that the decision now would define not just their marriage, but their entire future. She reached out, gently taking his hand, offering silent support. Her presence reminded Sumit of the life they had built together, the love that had survived so many obstacles, and the sacrifices they had already made. In the following moments, the house seemed to hold its breath. Relatives whispered anxiously, neighbors peered curiously, and the tension became almost unbearable. Sumit took a deep breath, steadying himself, and finally spoke, his voice calm yet resolute, carrying the weight of his decision. He declared that Jenny was his wife, his partner, and that he would not abandon her. He would not sacrifice love for approval. In that moment, the power dynamics shifted. The ultimatum, though harsh, could not break the bond they shared. The emotional release was immediate and profound. Jenny felt a surge of relief, mixed with tears of gratitude and validation. For Sumit, the act of defending Jenny was both liberating and terrifying. He had chosen love over tradition, partnership over compliance, and the consequences, though uncertain, were worth facing together. The tension in the room did not vanish instantly, but a new reality had been established. Their marriage, their unity, and their love could no longer be questioned. The days following the ultimatum were filled with reflection, emotion, and careful planning. The Singh household, once tense and hostile, began to shift subtly. The confrontation had left scars, yes, but it had also created clarity. Jenny and Sumit now understood that their love was non-negotiable, that their bond had to come first, even if it meant facing resistance from family or society. Every decision they made from this point forward would be guided by loyalty, trust, and the shared commitment they had fought so hard to protect. Jenny, who had endured months of scrutiny, gossip, and cultural pressure, finally felt a sense of vindication. She no longer had to tiptoe around the household, no longer had to fear the subtle attacks on her character. Sumit's support had changed the dynamics completely, allowing her to breathe, to be herself, and to reclaim her dignity. In private moments, she expressed gratitude and relief, tears of both pain and joy streaming down her face. This was more than a victory, it was a statement. Love, respect, and fairness mattered more than fear of judgment. Sumit, meanwhile, faced the reality of the consequences of his choice. His relationship with his mother would never be the same, and some relatives quietly distanced themselves, unsure where their loyalties should lie. Yet, he felt a newfound sense of empowerment. He had stood up for his marriage, defended the woman he loved, and made a decision that reflected his values rather than just tradition. It was liberating, even if it was uncomfortable, and the relief of no longer being caught in a tug-of-war between two worlds was palpable. Together, Jenny and Sumit began to rebuild their home and their lives. They discussed plans for the future, setting boundaries that would protect their marriage while maintaining what connection they could with family. They explored ways to support one another emotionally, financially, and socially, determined to create a safe, harmonious environment in which love, not judgment, defined their daily lives. For Jenny, this meant finally feeling like she belonged. For Sumit, it meant honoring both his love and his principles. The emotional journey also strengthened their bond in ways that no external validation ever could. Every challenge they had overcome, cross-cultural differences, criticism, ultimatums, now felt like a shared triumph. Fans watching their story unfold could see the depth of their connection, the resilience of their commitment, and the courage it took to face adversity head-on. Their love was no longer a private struggle hidden behind cameras or gossip, it was a testament to endurance, strength, and unwavering devotion. As they moved forward, Jenny and Sumit also embraced the lessons learned from the experience. They recognized the importance of communication, the value of standing up for oneself and one's partner, and the power of mutual support in overcoming obstacles. Their story was no longer just about drama or conflict, it was about resilience, sacrifice, and the courage to choose love even when it meant challenging tradition, expectations, and fear. So, what do you think? Did Sumit make the right choice by defending Jenny, even at the cost of family tension? Could this be a turning point not just for their marriage, but for others facing similar challenges? Comment below with your thoughts, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another shocking reality TV story. Thank you for watching, and remember, love, courage, and respect always make the strongest foundation.